If you've been eating less and the weight still isn't moving, specifically the body fat, your insulin may be physically blocking it from leaving your fat cells. That's not a metaphor. That's the actual biochemistry. I'm Dr. Michael Fitzmaurice. My background is in peripheral nerve surgery as well as exercise physiology. And I now work with people online, helping them understand how metabolic health drives nearly every chronic condition I used to treat surgically. Fat metabolism sits at the center of that conversation, and insulin is the molecule running the show. Here's what most people don't know. Insulin isn't just a blood sugar hormone. It's the body's primary fat storage signal. And when it's chronically elevated, it acts like a lock on your fat cells. Specifically, insulin suppresses two enzymes, hormone-sensitive lipase and adipose triglyceride lipase, that are responsible for releasing stored fat into circulation. At the same time, it ramps up an enzyme called lipoprotein lipase in your fat tissue, which actively pulls dietary fat into your adipocytes and keeps it there. There's also a second mechanism happening in your muscle. Insulin elevates something called malonyl-CoA, which physically blocks the entry of fatty acids into the mitochondria. So even if fat does get released, your muscle cells can't burn it. The result is a state researchers call metabolic inflexibility. Your body defaults to burning glucose and can't make the shift to burn fat as fuel, even between meals, even when you're fasting. The problem isn't willpower. Your metabolism is running on the wrong fuel source, and insulin is keeping it there. Your doctor may have told you your blood sugar is fine, but did they check your fasting insulin? Because those two are completely different things. In healthy adults, even a temporary spike in insulin after a meal can suppress fat release by 50 to 80%. When your fasting insulin is chronically elevated and the research threshold for metabolic significance is around 10 to 15 microunits per milliliter, that suppressive state nearly fully resolves between meals. Your body is never in a clean fat burning window. What's striking is a 2026 study that found men with obesity and higher fasting insulin during a 48-hour fast lost proportionately more lean mass, not fat. The mechanism traced back to a suppression of a specific fat cell signaling protein, F4. In other words, high insulin was preserving fat and breaking down muscle during the exact protocol designed to burn fat. Caloric restriction, when insulin is high, may be burning the wrong tissue. This is where the science gets important and where I need to be precise about what the evidence actually says, because it's been oversimplified in both directions. When researchers compare low carbohydrate diets to low fat diets in randomized controlled trials without strictly equalizing calories, low carbohydrate approaches tend to produce roughly twice the fat mass loss. In one 24-week trial of 120 overweight adults, the low-carb group lost about twice the fat mass of the low-fat group. But here's the critical nuance. In trials rigorously matching caloric intake between groups, the fat loss differences largely disappear. That tells us the benefit isn't magic. It's largely that reducing insulin-spiking carbohydrates suppresses appetite, so people spontaneously eat less. Now, where it gets clinically relevant, a 20-week randomized controlled trial by Ebeling and Ludwig found that after equivalent weight loss, people on low carbohydrate diets burned approximately 200 to 280 calories more per day, and that effect was amplified in people who started with high insulin secretion, up to 478 additional calories per day in the highest insulin group. If your insulin is elevated, carbohydrate reduction may give you a metabolic advantage that caloric restriction alone simply doesn't. A lot of people ask, should I count calories or should I try intermittent fasting? For someone with elevated fasting insulin, the research suggests that the mechanism matters as much as the number. A well-designed study comparing alternate day fasting to daily caloric restriction found that despite similar total weight loss, about 8% versus 6%, the alternate day fasting group reduced their fasting insulin by 52%. And how did their daily restriction group do? 14%. Same rough weight loss, but dramatically different insulin response. A meta-analysis of intermittent fasting trials found that fasting protocols reduce plasma insulin by an average of about 13 microunits per milliliter and meaningfully improve insulin resistance. And the longer the intervention, the stronger the effect. This suggests how you can create a caloric deficit and meaningfully improve insulin resistance. And the longer the intervention, the stronger the effect. This suggests that how you create a caloric deficit can matter as much as whether you do or not. Extending the fasted window appears to restore lipolytic access. It reactivates those fat-releasing enzymes that insulin suppresses in a way that simply eating less throughout the day may not achieve. Your eating window may be as important as what's inside. Here's the one thing I'd recommend you do after watching this video. Ask your doctor to check your fasting insulin, not just fasting glucose, not just the hemoglobin A1C, but fasting insulin. If it comes back above 10 to 12 microunits per milliliter, that's a clinically meaningful signal that caloric restriction alone is unlikely to give you the optimal body composition outcomes, and that your dietary approach, specifically reducing insulin spiking foods and potentially extending your fasting window, may need to be a part of the strategy. This isn't about going keto forever. It's about understanding your own metabolic profile so you can make informed decisions instead of just eating less and wondering why nothing changes. If this was useful, subscribe. More videos will cover how resistance training changes the insulin equation in a way most people aren't accounting for.